1000 LB Sisters, Season 7. Amy Slaton and new husband Brian Lovvor left the child behind. The morning sun rose slowly over Dixon, Kentucky, spilling soft light over the quiet town where Amy Slaton's story had always begun. But this morning, everything felt different. Her laughter that once filled the small house was gone. The children's toys scattered across the living room floor were reminders of a past she was trying hard to forget. Amy Slaton, once America's favorite down-to-earth mom from 1000 LB Sisters, was preparing to leave everything, even her own child, behind. After her messy split from Michael Halterman, Amy thought life would never feel right again. Her heart had been broken, her confidence shattered. She was exhausted from motherhood, from fame, from the constant cameras that watched every tear and every mistake. But then came Brian Lovvor. He wasn't famous, he wasn't flashy, he was quiet, charming, and most importantly, he listened. For Amy, that was everything. Brian made her feel alive again. He told her she deserved happiness, that she'd sacrificed too much for too long. He spoke words that wrapped around her like warmth on a cold night. And when he said, "Amy, we can start over, just you and me," she believed him. At first, it sounded innocent, a weekend away, a break to breathe. But deep down, Amy knew she wasn't just taking a break. She was running from the pain, from the expectations, and from the little boy who called her mama and needed her more than anything. Gage was only 3, with big brown eyes and a laugh that could melt any heart. But lately, Amy had been feeling like she was failing him. She'd sit in the dark some nights, crying silently, wondering if she was a good mother. The pressures of the show, the scrutiny from fans, the constant judgment online, it all piled up until she couldn't breathe. Brian promised her a different kind of life, one without cameras, without the constant reminder of her weight or her mistakes. "You've given everything to everyone else," he'd whisper, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Now it's time to live for yourself." That morning, Amy stood by the door with her suitcase. Her hands trembled. She looked around the house at the toys, the half-finished sippy cup on the counter, the crayon marks on the wall. Every little thing screamed of the life she was walking away from. She thought of Tammy, her sister, who had come so far in her own journey. Tammy had fought for her health, for her happiness, and had started to rebuild her life with new hope. Amy used to be proud of her. Now, she couldn't face her. She knew Tammy would never understand. As Brian loaded the bags into the car, Amy took one last look at the small bedroom down the hall. Gage was asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling under the soft blue blanket. She wanted to kiss him goodbye, to whisper that she loved him, but she was afraid that if she did, she wouldn't be able to leave. So she didn't. She closed the door softly and walked away. The car ride was silent at first. The radio played low country tunes, and Brian tapped the steering wheel to the rhythm. Amy stared out the window, tears pooling in her eyes. The world outside looked peaceful, but inside her, a storm was raging. "You did the right thing," Brian said, breaking the silence. "You need peace. You need to heal." Amy nodded, but the words didn't comfort her. Healing shouldn't hurt this much. When they reached their new home in Tennessee, a small rental house by the woods, Amy tried to convince herself that this was the new beginning she needed. She posted smiling photos on Instagram, showing off her fresh start with Brian. Fans flooded her comments with mixed reactions. Some said she looked happy, others asked where her children were. Amy ignored those questions. She couldn't answer them, not yet. days turned into weeks. Amy tried to fill her time with cooking, decorating, and filming short clips for her fans. But at night, when the house was quiet, she would scroll through old videos of Gage laughing, his tiny voice calling her mama. Sometimes she'd drop the phone and sob into her pillow, whispering apologies into the dark. Back in Kentucky, Tammy started to notice something was wrong. Amy wasn't returning calls. She hadn't visited in weeks. Rumors started swirling among the family. Amanda asked questions. Where's Gage? Where's Amy? When the truth finally surfaced that Amy had left her son with Michael and moved away with Brian, it tore the family apart. Tammy was furious. "You don't walk away from your babies!" she shouted during a phone call that ended with both sisters in tears. Amy tried to explain. "You don't understand, Tammy. I was drowning. I needed to find myself again." Tammy's voice broke. "You can't find yourself by losing your child, Amy." Those words echoed in Amy's mind for days. Meanwhile, the TLC cameras picked up on the family drama. Producers wanted to turn it into a storyline for season 7. They called Amy, asking for her side of the story. At first, she refused, but eventually she agreed. Maybe, she thought, if people saw her pain, they'd understand. When the new season aired, fans were shocked. The once bubbly Amy was now quieter, more withdrawn. The episode showed her in Tennessee, cooking dinner with Brian, her eyes sad even when she smiled. In a confessional, she said softly, "Sometimes loving yourself means making choices nobody else understands." But not everyone was sympathetic. Online, the backlash was brutal. Viewers accused her of being selfish, of abandoning her children. The comments cut deep, reopening wounds she thought had started to heal. Brian tried to comfort her, but Amy could feel the distance growing. The guilt was consuming her, and no amount of reassurance could make it go away. One night, after a particularly emotional episode aired, Amy sat alone on the porch. The moonlight fell over her face, and she whispered to herself, "What have I done?" In that moment, she realized something: she couldn't build a future on a broken heart. She had left behind the most important part of herself. The next morning, she told Brian she needed to go back, not to leave him, but to make things right. Brian didn't argue. He saw the pain in her eyes and knew he couldn't compete with the love of a mother for her child. When Amy drove back to Kentucky, every mile felt like both a punishment and a promise. She was terrified of facing her family, terrified of seeing her son after so long. When she finally reached Michael's house, she sat in the car for 10 minutes before finding the courage to knock on the door. Michael opened it, surprised. Gage peeked from behind him, a little older now, a little shy. Amy dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, Mama's here," she whispered. Gage hesitated for a moment, then ran into her arms. She held him tightly, sobbing into his shoulder, whispering over and over, "I'm so sorry." Michael didn't say much. He just watched quietly as Amy held their son. He could see she was broken, but also determined. Over the next few days, Amy stayed with Gage, trying to rebuild what she had lost. It wasn't easy. He was confused at first, unsure if she'd leave again. Amy promised she wouldn't. Tammy came to visit, her eyes filled with both anger and love. "You messed up, Amy," she said bluntly, "but at least you came back." Amy nodded, her voice trembling. "I don't ever want to be that person again." Season 7 ended with a montage: Amy playing with Gage in the backyard, Tammy cheering from the porch, and Brian visiting, quietly supportive. The narrator's voice over the final scene said, "Sometimes the road to healing leads us away from what we love, but true love always finds a way home." When the credits rolled, fans around the world cried. They saw not just a reality star, but a mother trying to fix her mistakes, a woman who had fallen, broken, and learned to stand again. Amy Slaton wasn't perfect. She never claimed to be. But in season 7, she showed something deeper than perfection. She showed humanity. And as she kissed her son goodnight that final evening, whispering, "Mama's home now," she finally felt the peace she had been searching for all along.